Okay, good morning everyone, and we are continuing here in Tehillim, and we're in Tehillim Samich, which is number 60. And just to remind ourselves, what we were talking about is that there is a world of Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael before Dovid HaMelech, and then there is the world of Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael after Dovid HaMelech. And Dovid brought in to Klal Yisrael the idea that Hashem is the one that is running the world. The wars and the victories and the losses and the casualties and the achievements and the success, it's all the Rabbi Shalom. And if you go into the milcham, if you go into the war, and you go into battle recognizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that is in charge of everything, so then you will be a different type of a fighter, you'll be a different type of a warrior, you'll be a warrior of the Rabbi Shalom because you realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that is taking care of everything. So there is a very famous pasuk in this Tehillim. Probably you've heard it over the years, and it's verse number 6, and the pasuk says the following: Nesata liyirecha nes. You have given a banner, a nes, a sign, to those who fear you. Lihis noises, to raise them up, mibnei kaishet sela, or for the sake of the truth or the might of the truth. Kaishet is another language of emes, another language of truth. So, nesata liyirecha, you gave over to those who fear you. Nes, we'll have to see this word nes, but the way that the little translation over here is that it's a banner. Lihis noises, to raise us up. Mibnei kaishet sela, for the sake of the truth itself. So I want to start with Rashi and the Metzudas Dovid and others who say over the following idea. Nesata liyirecha nes. You've given over a nes, a banner to those that fear you. Says Rashi, the word nes doesn't mean over here a banner. Rather, nisyonos shel tsaros harbe. You have given over nisyonos. Nes is a language of nisayon, of a test, of a challenge. You've given over many challenges of tsaros, of pain, of suffering, of difficulty, of hardships. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have given us an enormous amount of tests in life, and there are tsaros harbe, there are a lot of tsara, a lot of pain, and a lot of difficulty. Well, why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu do that? Well, this is Dovid HaMelech speaking over here. If anybody knew about nisyonos in the world, it's Dovid HaMelech, and he's saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you gave us a lot to deal with. Why? Why did you give us everything? Lihis noises, to raise us up. Liyos, says Rashi, liyos menusim bahem, that we should be tested through them. Im ya'amdu b'yirasecha, if we continue to stand up straight and proud in your yira, in the fear that we have of you. Says Rashi, a very simple concept. We've spoken about this probably 1,000 times over the years, but it's something that we have to chazer over again and again and again, because it's the only way that we can continue to be oimid, to stand up to the nisyonos in the proper way. Says Rashi, let's understand the mechanics of an nisayon, of a challenge. Why does the Rabbi Shalom, who loves us so much, why does he send us challenges? Why does he crush us with tsaros harbe, many difficulties in life? What is the purpose? Parents who love their children don't crush their children. Parents who love their children don't try to make their lives suffrage and difficulty and pain. On the other hand, we had yesterday at our house for one of the meals, so there was a mother of young children, and her daughter was going up the stairs, and I believe that the daughter was slipping, So the mother grabbed the daughter by the arm, by the shoulder. She dislocated her daughter's arm by mistake. It's a little girl. The bones are nimble and they're flimsy. So she did, and the daughter started crying, and she couldn't move, and she was in pain. So finally they got the daughter to calm down. They were thinking of taking her to the urgent care. We'll call Hatzalah something. It was already a couple of hours before Shabbos was going to end. I told him, if she went to sleep, she's not screaming her head off. It can't be anything too serious. What's the worst that will happen? You're going to take her afterwards. She'll get the cast. That's the worst. But then the mother started crying. And she said, but I feel so terrible. I'm the one who did it. I did this to my daughter. I said, you didn't do it to your daughter. It was a mistake. It wasn't even intentional. The bones are flimsy. They're soft. They're brittle. It happens. She's crying. I said, it's okay. You didn't mean to do it. Parents make mistakes. You didn't even make a mistake. You're just trying to help your daughter. If a parent hurts a child, they cry. They're in pain themselves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Avinu Shebashamayim. He is our Father in heaven. Why would He give us challenges that are hurting us and breaking us and sorrows, rabbis, so many difficulties? Why would Hashem do that? He's the most merciful of all entities and beings in the world, the most loving, the most chesed, Rav Chesed. He's abundant kindness. Why would He do such a thing? Because menusim behem, we are being tested through the challenges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends our way. Im ya'amdu b'yirasecha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to know, will you stand up strong with your yira, with your fear, your awe of the Ribbono Shel Olam? Will you be able to overcome the challenges and not waver in your faith of Hashem? Will you be able to see that whatever challenge He's testing you with, however He's determining how strong you are, it's all the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is measuring the Yiras Shamayim, the fear and the awe and the emunah and the bitachon that a person has in Hashem. So it looks bad. It looks tsaros rabbis, tremendous difficulties that Hashem will place us through, hardships, challenges, pain, suffering, tragedy, you name it. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing all to see if we are one with Him. Are we really as truthful as we are in the words that we say in our davening? Like the famous story with Rabbi Akiva, when he's in the last moments of his life, his skin is being combed and the neshama is leaving him, and he screams out the words, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And his Talmidim say, Rebbe, Ad Kan, even now, that's what's on your mind? And he said, I've been training for this moment all of my life. My whole life, I wanted to know what it means that you give b'chol nafshecha, your whole life to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now I have a chance. I'm not going to give my whole life to Hashem. So the last words on the lips of Rabbi Akiva was Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And therefore, says Rashi, if you see tsaros rabbis, if a person sees nisyonos surrounding them on all sides, you should know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just wants to see what you're going to do with that nisayon. How are you going to respond? Are you going to crack like an egg? Or are you going to be strong like a metal kalfalon pot over there? Are you going to crumble and stay in your bed and wallow away in your misery, feel sorry for yourself? Or are you going to stand up and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know that everything that you do is for the good. It's just making me a person that's going to be closer to you. We had this week in Shul a young man by the name of Yossi Hecht, who just became a chassan. He just got engaged to a girl from our community. The story itself is a miracle story. And this is a young man, he was like the macher, he was the guy that was running around, being mechazik everybody in yeshiva, davening from the Omud, laning the Sefer Torah, going to chasanas, to weddings, dancing, doing backflips, everything. He was the life of the party. And one day he starts feeling pain in his back, and he goes to the doctor, and it turns out he has a tumor in his spine. 22 years old perhaps at the time. And they run the exams and the tests, and they try treatments. No, they have to do surgery. And they didn't do just one surgery. I believe they had to do 2 surgeries. And at the end of the second surgery, he was left without the ability to walk right now. The doctors are hopeful, be'ezus Hashem, he is, but right now he's in a wheelchair. And so you're a 22-year-old guy. You go from being the life of the party to being in a bed, in a hospital, treatments, many, many side effects as a result of the treatments and the surgeries. And what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? So if he would go into a state of misery and depression, nobody would have any tinnitus, nobody would have any complaints or claims against him. That would be a normal reaction from a regular human being. But while he was in the hospital, one of the things that happened to him was that his internal organs in his bladder and the like were not working. He could not go to the bathroom. And his body was suffering with toxins and in pain. He could not go. So he decided that he's going to strengthen himself, and he's going to share his own strengthening of the brach of Asher Yatzar that we say after we go to the restroom. He's going to share with Klal Yisrael. And he made an organization while he's lying in the hospital bed. He can't do much. He can't even use his faculties. He made an organization called Asher to the Yatzar. And he's got cards, and he has videos, and he has shiurim, and he goes around. And he had a nace that took place. Nace, yeah, that's one of the words over here, a miracle. Someone that stands up tall in the nisyonos that they will go through. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make a nace, he will make miracles for them. And the miracle is, and the doctors couldn't explain it suddenly like that, everything started working again inside, and he was like a regular person. I don't want to say too much explanations and details over here, but everything started working once again. Because when you're oimid, when you stand up to the nisyonos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends, and instead of cracking and crumbling, you become stronger in your yira, in your awe of the Ribbono Shel Olam, stronger in your avas Hashem and your amun in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So then you're getting lifted up. That's Li's noises. You're getting lifted up. And you become a person that's worthy of the nisim, of the miracles of Hashem. So he came to continue dating the young lady, Sasha, that he just became a chassan to. And yes, Sasha Frankel. And I said to him, once you're here, let's chaperine, let's take advantage. Speak between Mincha and Marav. He said, no problem, be happy to. And he said over in those words that there's one very important thing that he learned over these last few years of his illness. And that is, complaining will get you absolutely nowhere. And it will only make things worse. But if you keep a positive perspective, and you see the good that is there, and you see what you could accomplish, and what you could overcome, you only become a greater person. And that's what the pasuk is saying over here. It's telling us, Nesata liyirecha, I've given to those who fear you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Dovid says, you've given to those who fear. Hashem knows who to test. He's not going to test the person who doesn't have fear and awe of Hashem. He's not going to test the guy that's out there on the street who doesn't even know who God is. He tests those that already know Hashem. Remember, the word yira is a language of riyah, of seeing. Those people that already see HaKadosh Baruch Hu in their life, those people that have an awareness of the Ribbono Shel Olam in their life, those people that are living with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says Dovid HaMelech, those are the ones that you are sending the challenges to. Nace. Why? Lihis noises, to raise the person up, says Rashi over here, lios menusim behem, to test the person. Im ya'amdu b'yirasecha, is that real? When you say that you believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you love Hashem. Is it real? Do you really love Hashem? Do you really believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Do you really live with Hashem? We'll find out. We'll find out how much that love and that emunah and that yirah truly is. So Hashem tests. And as Rashi points out over here, tsaros rabbis, he could bring down crushing challenges on a person. But it's all just a test to see if we're going to be able to overcome lihis noises and to be lifted up and raised as a result. And then a person will be zeicha to the nes, they'll merit the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make for them under the circumstances. Mibnei kaishet, says the verse, Mibnei kaishet, for the sake of emes, of truth. Zokt Rashi, lekashet mideisecha ba'olam, to, I don't know how you say it in English, to truthen, I don't think that is the word in English, but to make true and real your midos, your traits in this world. Shekeshititein lehem ha'toiva, that way when you will give a person good, lo yaharhuru ha'umais acharecha, when the world will see that you are giving goodness and blessing and bracha to Klal Yisrael, they will have no complaints against what you have done, because they will see that the Jewish people don't have an easy life. Klal Yisrael goes through suffering, we go through hardships, we go through pain. And if we stand tall in anything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends us through, if our nation doesn't crumble under the pressure of what goes on around us, and still we continue to say the words of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad under all circumstances, then when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the ultimate taiva, the good that He wants to give over to Klal Yisrael, nobody can complain a drop, because they see that we were faithful to Hashem the entire time. We never left HaKadosh Baruch Hu's side. They will say that it's good what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. Hashem, you were entitled, or the Jewish people were entitled to the goodness that you brought their way. Because Klal Yisrael stood up to hundreds and of thousands of challenges that you gave them like no other nation in the world. They deserve your bracha. They deserve the miracles. They deserve the chesed. What a transition this Tehillim is as we're leaving Sefer Bereishis and we're going into the Sefer of Shmos. Sefer Shmos is known as the Sefer HaGeula, the Sefer, the book of Geula, redemption. But the redemption doesn't happen till after there's a gullus, till after there is a deep and a dark and a very strong exile that we went through. And as we look at all of the challenges that Klal Yisrael had to endure in that gullus, the death and the deprivation and the beatings and the whippings and the horrific conditions that we lived under, we have to recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did all of that only to see if at the end of the day the Jewish people would remain faithful to the Ribbono Shel Olam. We know that when Yaakov Avinu was leaving this world and the brachas that he gave over to his children, one of his last messages was, don't forget that you're a Yid. Don't forget what it means to be a Jew. And a Jew is a muvdal. We are separate from everybody else in the world. That's why he put us into Goshen, and he said, stay there, don't leave. Over there you could be safe. Over there you will grow. Over there you remain kadosh and holy. Don't leave the sanctum of Goshen, because the minute that you come out of there and end up in Mitzrayim proper, you're going to assimilate. It's going to be too powerful around you. And Yosef HaTzadik, like it says in the Torah, as long as Yosef Achiv and his brothers were alive, they followed in the footsteps of Yaakov Avinu and the message that he set out in front of them. But afterwards, when Klal Yisrael began to trickle away from Goshen, and we began to go into Mitzrayim, and we began to assimilate, and we got back into Avodah Zarah and all these different things. So the response of Hashem was, now there's going to be a consequence. You didn't listen to your forefather, Yaakov Avinu. You didn't listen to the final words and message of Yosef HaTzadik, who was just the living legacy of his father. And then we go through all of the suffering of Mitzrayim, which was suffering beyond belief, physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological, everything. They were masters of the torturing game that they did to us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw deep down into the souls of Klal Yisrael. When we call out to the Rebbeinu Shalom and ask Him for help, remind ourselves that there's Hashem, He saw that the neshama still is resonating inside of us and wants to come back to Hashem. And so at that moment, things shift, and we begin to be oimid to stand up once again to the nisyonos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places in front of us. And then when there will be a geula, which will be of proportions that the world had never seen before, mass destruction of the Mitzrim, Klal Yisrael being taken out into the midbar, into the wilderness with the Ananei HaKavod, clouds of glory, the Shechina surrounding them, taking them to Har Sinai. Nobody could have any tainas, any complaints against Hashem or Klal Yisrael, because they will say, Klal Yisrael went through so much hardship in Mitzrayim, so many difficulties, so much pain and suffering, and yet at the end of the day they stood close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. They deserve the geula. They deserve the redemption. They deserve the nisim, the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sets up for them. So this young man, Yossi Hecht, who is here, you have just to understand how a shidduch was made. And that is, and it's all part of the miracle. He gets sick. He has a surgery. He can't walk. He can't use the restroom. He makes an organization, Asher to the Yotzar. And then he goes around, he starts speaking. And he's being mechazik people. And he's making videos to give people strength, how they can overcome their own challenges in life. That Hashem does what He does, but you have to realize Hashem is merciful and He's kind and He only wants what's best for the person. And he's making songs, and he's singing together with Avram Fried, a beautiful song, and other singers. And you just can't imagine what this young man has accomplished in such a short amount of time. So Sasha Frankel was one day looking at one of his videos, and she saw his video, and she was so overwhelmed by the emunah and the bitachon and the ehrlichkeit and the honesty of that young man. She said, that's the person I want to marry. And she calls his Rabbi, and she says, please read the shidduch. Please make a shidduch between me and him. That's who I want to marry. And the rest is history. And they're about to get married in March, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. If you stand close to the Rebbeinu Shalom, you stay close to Hashem, even while He is pummeling you with tsaros rabbis. But your emunah and your bitachon doesn't waver. On the other hand, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. Lihis noises HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to raise you up, and He is going to make miracles for you, that you have a shidduch that in Shemaim was made already 40 days before 40 days before you're even conceived. There's already a bas kol, there's a heavenly voice that's calling out what your shidduch is going to be. So somehow Yossi Hecht from Far Rockaway, New York, and Sasha Frankel from Tarzana, California, they're going to have to get together. How's it going to happen? Hashem says, I have many different ways that it's going to happen. And the way that Hashem decided was in this particular venue. That Yossi Hecht is going to go through challenges, but he's going to become a bigger tzaddik as a result of that. He's going to have a video that one day is going to be touching the heart of a young lady who's going to see it and say, that's who I want to marry. Hashem says, well, that was what was decided many, many years ago. Now we're going to make the shidduch take place. Says Rashi, every nisayon is like that. Now here you're witnessing a miracle in front of your eyes. How all the parts fall into place and they'll live happily ever after. Ad mei v'esim shana b'ez Hashem. You don't always see the miracle in your life. You sometimes see the tsaros rabbos coming. You don't see all the great signs of wonder and light and miracle. But know that every nisayon that a person goes through, the results and the dividends and what you accomplish and you build for yourself, that's all the same. If you overcome a nisayon, that itself is a nes already. That already is a miracle. When the world is crumbling around us from the challenges of life, the smallest, little, hardest things. You know, it's like the kid who wakes up in the morning and he sneezes, I can't go to school today. Yeah, but you were like running around the house last night till 10 o'clock at night, bouncing off the walls. You were screaming, yelling, singing, dancing. What's my... today I can't go. I really don't feel good. Stand up to the challenge. You could do it. You'll become a stronger person. You'll realize what you could accomplish, what you could do. There's a beautiful book, All for the Boss. Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Herman, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He was from the greatest Orthodox Jews in the turn of the century in America. If it wouldn't be for him, I don't know that most of Orthodox Jewry would be around in the world today. He was a powerhouse of Amunah, a powerhouse in his attachment to Torah and to mitzvahs. He made many inroads into the world of kashrus, into the world of tznius, into the worlds of schooling, of education, of teaching. He did amazing, amazing things. One man. One of his big things was that my daughters and my sons, they have to get out of America at a certain point and go see what Yiddishkeit, what Torah really is all about. So he would send them off to go and learn in Europe in the Mir Yeshiva. And his daughter, Ruchama Shein, who eventually became a prolific author, she has a gift for how she writes things. She writes, she would write letters to her father after she got married. So her and her husband, they spent, not Shana, they spent several years, not in a nice apartment in Ramat Eshkol in Eretz Yisrael, not in a deluxe duplex in Lakewood, not in a fine, nice community in somewhere in New York or Baltimore. No. They went to the Mir in Europe, which was a land of primitivity at the time. There was not, I don't believe, running water. There was no restrooms in the house. There was no central heat, no central air. There were no roads that were paved in the wintertime. It got slushy and dirty and muddy wherever you walked. And she's writing in that book. She's writing letters to her father. And she's telling, you can't imagine the conditions. She was a spoiled American girl. Now, what does that mean, spoiled? In 1930, what does that mean? That means she lived in an apartment that had running water and a bathroom. And maybe there was a radiator so they could get some heat into the house. But it wasn't a cushy life the way that we have. It was still struggles. But in Europe, it was a whole different story altogether. But she went through many, many struggles there, and it was very hard to acclimate and get comfortable over there, but eventually did, and that itself stood her for the rest of her life. There weren't many things in life that could be disruptive to her regular daily life. Because once you go through those kind of challenging times, everything else, it's a walk in the park. It's a breeze. Oh, what do you call it? The faucet's not working today? Okay, we'll get it fixed. Oh, the heat's not working? Okay, we'll take care of it. Yeah, but we have down pillows today, so we'll just make ourselves warmer. Oh, there's not so much food left over. What are we going to do? We'll get food. Don't worry about it. Everything suddenly is small when you go through the bigger challenges of life. You're an ace. A person that overcomes a challenge is a walking miracle. And this Rashi says that you should know that once you do it, it's not just for yourself. you become an example. You become a symbol of the Jewish people. You become a symbol of godliness in this world for everybody else to see. And when Klal Yisrael itself goes through like a global type of nisayon, and we come out still kicking and screaming with amun and bitachon in the Rebbeinu Shalom, so then the world cannot have any tainas, any complaints. And perhaps that's why we find after the Holocaust, the Brisker Rav said Klal Yisrael lost 6 million Jews. We were devastated, we were annihilated, it was misery for Klal Yisrael. And Hashem suddenly, in 1948, gives us back the land of Eretz Yisrael, as if it didn't belong to us the entire time. And one of the miracles that happened over there was that as they had the UN vote if it should go into the hands of the Jews or not, in a world that was seething with anti-Semitism, the whole world turned their back on us during the Holocaust. We think that Americans were big tzaddikim, that they cared about us. They sent us away on boats. They didn't want us in our country. And the rest of the world turned on us. So the world was seething with anti-Semitism. Nobody felt bad for us. But when it came to the vote, we passed the margin just that they said, okay, let the Jews have the land of Israel back. Said the Brisker Rav, the fact that in 1948 HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Eretz Yisrael, it was a kiss from the Rebbeinu Shalom to assuage, I think that's the word, all of the pain and the suffering and the tragedy that we went through while we were in the chambers of the Holocaust. If you overcome the challenges of life, and that's the tenacity of Klal Yisrael, there has never been a nation that has suffered as many tragedies as we have. There never has been a nation that so many other nations rose up against us and tried to destroy us and to kill us, and they had the backup of the whole world around them. Nobody cared. And still, Hashem never lets us disappear completely. We'll never be extinct and annihilated. And after all is said and done, we pick ourselves back up, we brush off the dust and the ashes, and we continue to stand tall with our amunah and bitachon and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Said the Brisker Rav, that Eretz Yisrael given back to Klal Yisrael was a kiss from Hashem. If you go with these words in the pasuk over here, it's the nestes noises. It was that since that we overcame and we stood up strong and we did not go away from the rebellion after all the patches and the hitting and the murders and everything we took. Hashem says, now that you survived, I'm giving you the ultimate good. I'm giving you back Eretz Yisrael. And even the most anti-Semitic countries couldn't say no. They said, take it. Go ahead. You deserve it. If a nation will be able to go through a Holocaust and still believe that it's precious to be a Jew, and still believe in Torah and in mitzvahs and the land of Eretz Yisrael is the holy land, is the promised land that Hashem gave over to us in the Torah, and Hashem wants to give it to you, we're not going to get in the way. Take the brachas from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all yours. That's Rashi's pshat. Mitzudas Dovid says, in a similar vein, Me'ata titin li'yerecha harama. Now you should give over to those who fear you. Harama, you should give them an elevated status. Li'isroimim ba'olam, they should be elevated in this world. Same idea. That when we accomplish, when we overcome, when we go through those nisyonos that the Rebbeinu has in store for us, so we become elevated individuals. And we become elevated in the eyes of others as well. We look different, we talk different, we think different, we act different. Everything is different about us. Why? Because once that you lift somebody up as a result of overcoming their challenges in life, if Klal Yisrael go through difficulties, through hardships, and there's a harama, there's an elevated status that we reach, so it will truthen your word in this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because you said that you wanted to rescue and save Klal Yisrael and put them peacefully ad masam on their land. That's what you wanted. Remember, Dovid HaMelech is the king. And every fight that it is that Klal Yisrael should live in peace in Eretz Yisrael. So we had challenges and we had difficulties. It's true. But what's the ultimate goal that Hashem wants? Hashem wants that Klal Yisrael will live in Eretz Yisrael b'shalom, in peace. We don't want enemies coming in. We don't want Nebuchadnezzar and all of his cronies to come on in, Titus to come on in and wipe out the Beis HaMikdash and kill millions of people and send us in the gullahs. That's not what we want. And that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants that we should live there in a peaceful manner with shalom amongst Klal Yisrael. Our enemies will just leave us alone and we should be at peace. And when we go through those times where we have to stand up tall to the situation around us and be like a Dovid HaMelech, a warrior who realizes that all of the wars are being fought by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself and none other, then we get the bracha, and that bracha is live in your land in peace. Now, even if we don't live in our land in peace, but it's the same thing for the individual, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants everybody to live a life of shalom, a life of peace. He doesn't want a person to walk around anxious during the day. He doesn't want them to walk around feeling sorry for themselves during the day. He doesn't want them to walk around frustrated and angry during the day. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a person to walk around with menuchas hanefesh, peace of mind, tranquility, no matter what is going on all around them. He wants them to be at ease and at peace. So the nisyonos of life are not to crush our brains and our thoughts. They're not here to alarm us and get us nervous and the like. The nisyonos of life are to make us stronger and tougher and more resilient, so that when something will come our way that the average person on the street would go berserk for, like for example, if they forgot their phone at home when they were driving down the street, and suddenly when they go to make a call, 20 minutes later, it's a nightmare for them. They begin panicking. Their heart starts panicking. What am I going to do the whole day? I'm not going to have a telephone. A Jew says to himself, Baruch Hashem, I don't have my phone today. Maybe I'll actually be able to think. Maybe people will leave me alone. You know, we had a RCC rabbinical conference a few years ago, and Rabbi Rosenberg from Shai Tzedek spoke, and he said that the unspoken rule in the past was, before the days of cell phones and the like, was that if you were a Rav and you received a telephone call and somebody left you a message on your answering machine, the unspoken rule was you had 24 hours to return the call. Everybody understood that. You get a call, there's other calls on the machine, you have 24 hours to return the call. Today, with the phones and the iPhones and this phone and that and the text messaging and the voice notes now that people send, if you don't respond within about 24 seconds, so the person starts flipping out. Why isn't he getting back to me? Well, he doesn't like me? The rabbi doesn't want to talk to me? He doesn't know who I am? Calm down. Calm down. But if you're a person who went through the nisyonos of life, you realize it's no big deal. So maybe you missed the call. I had to speak to somebody about a very important matter in Eretz Yisrael. And the easiest way to reach this person is you have to leave them like a voice note, and then they get back to you usually right away. He didn't get back to me for a week. So, okay, I could have drove myself crazy, and there's like pressing thing over here. I said, whatever, he's probably busy, he's got a lot going on, whatever. And he just sent me, I turned on my phone after Shabbos, please accept my apology. I missed your message altogether. When can we speak? It happens. Or the guy's in the middle of who knows what is going on. A person expects a response immediately. Maybe he's saving a life. Maybe he's just having a quiet moment with his wife. Maybe he's doing homework with his children right now. Maybe he's the kind of father who, when he walks in the house, he doesn't have his phone on him because he just wants to be able to be focused in on the family that's sitting in front of him. So calm down. But if you never go through challenges and you don't overcome the challenges in life, then the smallest little things a person overreacts to. Says the Metzudas Dovid, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted that Klal Yisrael should live in Eretz Yisrael b'shalom, in peace. But we're learning it out that Hashem wants each and every one of us to live our own lives in shalom and peace as well. And therefore, once you begin to rise to the challenge that Hashem sends in front of us, you are, like he says, Harama liHisraelim, you're elevated. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will elevate you even more. You're above all the silly little things of this world. You're above the emotional constraints that people have, being tied down to this world that bother them and make them nervous all day long. It's silly. The things that we fret over and that we worry about and we obsess about, it's silly little things. But if you're living in this world and you're not Nisraimim, you're not above that, you're going to get trapped, you'll get caught in the quagmire of life. But if you're an elevated person, and says Dovid HaMelech, the way to become elevated is through the nisyonos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends you. You begin to realize what's important and what is not important, what is koishet, what is the truth, and what is not the truth. To get bothered by what we would call narishkeit, silly little things in this world, is not the truth. If you have bigger things that are going on in your life, maybe even there a person shouldn't get worried. What do I have to worry? Last night my son had to make it to the airport. It was a very funny scene which took place. We had the chazan that was here. He's a Breslover chassid. And my son is very typical Lakewood, black and white. So these two different approaches to emunah, bitachon, and living life. So my son has he thought that his flight was at 9:30. The chazan has a flight at 10 o'clock. And the chazan said, you know what? Let's save your parents a trip. They don't have to go. I'll take an Uber. You come with me in the Uber. I'm at 10, you're at 9:30. We have plenty of time. My son checks his flight. He realizes he's taking off at 9:05. So I said, okay, it's still fine. We can still get there on time. You'll go with him. I said, if you want, I'll take you. So the guy said, wow, don't worry. I can be ready in 5 minutes. Not a problem. I'll be ready in 5 minutes. So we start wazing to see how long it takes to get to the airport. Of course, 45 minutes to get to the airport. That's 40. Who's on the road? Apparently enough people on the road. Motzi Shabbos, 45 minutes. So now we're standing outside the house, waiting for the chazan to come out. He's going to be there in 5 minutes. It's now about 10 minutes. And my son's like, oh, Tante, I really have to go. It's a flight. I said, listen, if you want to get in the car, we'll get in the car right now. Okay, let's see. Then we see that the light from the room that he was staying in turns off. Okay, he's coming. He comes, he's totally relaxed, he's chilled out. My son's like, he said, my flight's at 9 o'clock. He's like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're going to make it in time. You have nothing to worry. He's like, okay. He's like, come on, let's see. We said, no, we looked already. It's 45 minutes. So he does, wait, no, it's 44 minutes to get to the airport now. So don't worry. So my son says, this is great. A Breslov, a chassid, and the Lakewood boy. Let's see how this is going to turn out. So in Breslov, they have a saying that if you are drowning in sin and you're doing all these terrible things and you need to be saved and rescued, never despair, because Rabbi Nachum will come, he'll pull you by your pace, he'll pull you out, and he'll save you. So he says to my son, don't worry. He says, I'll pull you by your pace, I'll pull you out. You're going to get there in time, don't worry. So my son starts laughing. And they order the Uber. He said, order the Uber. We're supposed to be there in 2 minutes. Then they look at the Uber thing. He's now 8 minutes away. Well, how do you go from being 2 minutes away to being 8 minutes away? So then they see it's a Prius. And my son says, oh, Prius is the worst. That means they drive slow and they follow all the rules. So then 8 minutes is like time is like ticking away and it's getting later. My son is like getting a little antsy over here. I'm like, don't worry. It's all going to be good. I promise everything's going to be good. Anyway, finally the priest shows up. And the chazan says to the guy, he says, look, this guy has a flight in an hour and 5 minutes, or whatever, hour and a half. He says, get us to the airport in 35 minutes, I'll give you $20. And he says, and who's going to pay for my ticket? He said, okay, you drive how you have to drive. We're going to get there anyway. Anyway, they had a very pleasant, my son told me that it's such an amazing car ride. They schmoozed the entire time. And the truth is that the chazan ended up getting out first. And after he got out, the Uber driver said to my son, wow. He said, I haven't seen two people sit in the back seat and talk to each other in years. Everybody sits in the back seat and they're just on their phone. They don't even talk to each other. What a nice thing to see people talking to each other. So they made a Kiddush Hashem. He said, I got into the airport like 7:55. By 8:03, I was at the gate. Wow. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. Don't have to sweat the small things in life. Everything's going to work out. And even if it wouldn't, what's the worst thing? You missed the flight. That's the worst thing that can happen. When a person goes through nisyonos, it toughens their resilience and their skin. And then there are nisroimim, they are elevated to a place that they never were before, and they don't get bogged down by the little things anymore over here. They're living in a different plane, and then there'll be another set of challenges, and those challenges will bring them up to another level, and so on and so forth. But it's all for our benefit. And then you'll be living on a daily basis in shalom. You'll be at peace. You'll be at ease. You'll be tranquil. Why? Because the things that used to bother you, they don't bother you anymore. It's silly. Now, there are things that are big, but even the big things in life, a person will be able to confront and they'll be able to handle because they realize that they are living on a different level altogether. And that was this beautiful boy that was here, this young man, Yossi Hecht. He goes around in a wheelchair. He didn't want people to feel sorry for him. So he learned how to drive a special car. He drives the gas and the brakes with his hands. And he drives all around New York, all by himself. Keeps the wheelchair in the back seat, gets out of the car, pulls out the wheelchair, gets in the wheelchair, goes and does his thing, travels around communities throughout America, goes and he gives speeches, Shabbatons, he's mechazik people, just to see him as a chizuk. Because he went through a nisayon, and instead of crumbling, he was nisraiming. He became elevated. And all the things that he could have complained about, and he could have worried about, and he could have been sad about, he pushed them to the side. And he decided to choose a whole different outlook and a view on life. And Hashem said, you're going to live in such an elevated state, you're a miracle. And a person who's a miracle, you deserve miracles. So there's a girl in Tarzan that's going to see your video, and she's going to decide on her own she wants to marry you. She'll make the shidduch herself. And it went so beautiful, and it was an immediate connection between the two of them. Baruch Hashem, they became a chassan and kala. On Friday, the vort, I believe, is today in New York, and the chasana be'ez Hashem is going to be in March, and they're going to live happily ever after. Ad me'ev esim shana, in health and happiness with a beautiful family. Because they're nisraimim. They're above. We have to learn how to live our lives in the elevated state that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to, and then the little tiny things don't bother us. I'll just read you a little bit more in the Mefarshim. The Radak says over here, Li's noises, Li's gadel, to become greater, al oivenu, over our enemies, laharim, to be raised up, nisanu aleim, to be like a banner, to be raised up like a sign over the enemies. And this is not just the physical enemies. That's what Dovid HaMelech is in the simple form. That's what he's talking about. We're going in to fight our enemies, and they have tightness against us, and they try to destroy us. We have to be above them. But we all have enemies in life. We have enemies, people, situations, emotions, feelings, missed opportunity. We have so many enemies in life. We can't live being bogged down by the enemies of life. Says the Radak, you've got to be misgadil, you grow, and you become greater, and you become stronger than all those things. Because of your truth, Hashem. Shamarta, that you have said, that you want to bring your nation, Klal Yisrael, once again into the land of Eretz Yisrael, b'shalom, in peace, that the enemies will leave us alone. The same idea. We can't let the enemies of life bother us all day long. We can't let it take up our mind. You know, sometimes you're in the middle of davening, and you're in the middle of a Shemon Esrei. It could be a beautiful Shemon Esrei. And the next thing you know, you got lost in the world of the enemies. You got lost in the world of worry. You got lost into the world of anxiety. And you're holding back the inner what just happened to me? Where was I? I was thinking about this and thinking about that and worrying about this and worrying. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you'll just become stronger and more resilient, and you will grow, all these little things, you'll begin to leave them behind. You'll have such a better life. You'll be a walking banner of light, of emunah, of bitachon. You'll be people will be attracted. They'll want to come towards you because they'll see you know what it's all about. You understand what life is all about. I see you don't get bothered. I'm not saying this I'm just telling you this story because you'll understand how it goes. My in-laws came for Shabbos for the first time since my father-in-law got sick. And he has 24-hour care. And they're all goyim. Nice people, but they're all goyim. In the morning at about 7:45, so the caretaker that was in the house the whole night, and I only see him every once in a while when I go to visit my in-laws. He's not always there, but he was in the house with us. Nice guy, Edwin. As I'm getting ready to go to shul, he says, Rabbi, Goy, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, I see that you're a very patient person. I have a real struggle with being patient in my life. Could you give me some advice? How could I work on myself to be more patient? I had very small interaction with him, I'm telling you. The truth of the matter is, I thought that one of the things that I did the night before actually made light of a certain thing which would make him think that maybe it wasn't but he saw something different. He saw a person who has patience, dealing with his wife and his children and his in-laws and his parents and 50 people in the house, patient. So he's asking me, can you please share with me some insight how to be a more patient person? And it turns out Itaka has he had a very hard situation. I asked him about his life. I said, you're a caretaker, you're working through the night, you must come home, you're exhausted. How could anybody so exhausted have patience when they come home? He said, it's even worse than that. He says, my wife goes to work at 7:30 every morning, and I have to take care of the kids till 12 o'clock. So I said, so you go from almost like a sleepless night to taking care of 3 kids, and you're expecting to have patience? I said, just forget about it. You have no chance. No, I didn't tell him. I tried to give him some advice of what I thought was going to work in the right way. But if you are nisroimim, you lift yourself up in situations and you lift yourself up to become somebody that's better than the run-of-the-mill, and you're working on yourself, other people will see that also. And then they're going to come and they're going to ask you, so how do you do this? How do you get here? How can you deal with this? How can you overcome this challenge? That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be able to do. He wants us to live in that world all of the time, and that's the benefit of Nisyonos. The benefit of challenge in our life is not to hurt us. It's only to make us better. It's not to put us down, it's to bring us up. Nicely, his noises, says Dovid HaMelech over here, it's to make us stronger individuals that are going to be able to do something that is very favorable in the eyes of Hashem and around us. Because anyone who lives with deeper commitments to their emunah, to the Yiras Shamayim, to the dveikis in Hashem, to understanding what it means to live a life that is not bogged down by the silly little things, the nourishkeit of this world, that's a person who becomes a beacon of hope to everybody else that is around them. So we should be zeichem, Yetz Hashem, to merit the neis lehis noises, to through the challenges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts us through, we're nisraim and we are elevated, and we become like a banner, like a symbol to not just to ourselves, but to other people as well, of what you could accomplish when you work hard, when you go through, when you do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do. And in that zechus, as Dovid HaMelech says, the goal was to eventually bring Klal Yisrael into Eretz Yisrael and let us live there b'shalom. So if we'll live in shalom and peace in our lives here with the enemies and all the foolish things will not bother us and deter us from what our mission is, then eventually, Be'ez Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make the ultimate Neslis, will raise up all of Klal Yisrael to the ultimate Shalom, the ultimate peace that He wants, which is with the Bias Goyal Tzedek, the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, where He takes us back to Yerushalayim, Yah HaKodesh, B'mheira V'yameinu.